Well,
Yeah, well, it's fine, we're all gathered here for the same reason, so let's hit it.
okay. We got a busy couple of weeks around here. It's been a tough week this week. May not know, just to formally announce that Harwell tendered his resignation. Didn't hear that, see that, but that's all the cards. No longer with the city. Makes the week go tough. But you know, I learned a long time ago in life that sometimes things you put in perspective. And I'm telling you anybody this week, but I have granddaughters. You do not have favorite granddaughters, but actually my favorite granddaughter that's been having some issues. Had an MRI this morning, and just 10 minutes ago I got the message that she is good. So, yeah, praise the Lord.
God is good.
When you think that things are not just real good, it puts it in perspective. So same thing with Don.
Same thing with Don, it could have been so much worse. So much worse.
So anyway, it's, I always try to tell people it's gonna be okay. It doesn't matter what happens, it's gonna be okay.
And hopefully tomorrow night, Mr. Bynum will have a house. All goes well.
I know it's tough, we try to keep control of our population.
One person at a time. One family.
One family at a time.
I know, I can bet. The earlier part of this week, I was thinking, this is not, I haven't had a great time here, but then there, this was wonderful. As I was waiting the news on my granddaughter, I thought it was a terrible time. In fact, I told all earlier this morning that there's a situation where we will not leave. And be prepared. Anyway, so we're going, we, just a little recap here. And, this is probably primarily for your benefit. You may get tired of all this stuff for your benefit or Eddie's. But Ms. Otterfeld, this is grand over her second rodeo here. So the purpose of our methodology in the last 2 or 3 years has been to work through several different work sessions, town hall meeting, all of that to get input. A number of years ago, we prepared a budget and we just nearly did it in a vacuum. Because we never saw anyone's opinion of it, and your first view of it was at the end of July when we saw it. So, our effort here tonight is to, number one, talk about our capital improvement plan, but also to get whatever input y'all want, goals that you want, and kind of go through with you what our thoughts are on our general budget here, and then in a few minutes we'll turn it over to Loretta for the capital improvement plan. Before I forget it, I want to say thank you to Mr. Ross down here at the end of the table. Ross is a fine, fine young man. If I was looking for a fourth son, Ross even looks like he could belong in my family with my redheaded son.
Yes.
So Ross is a great dad and a great husband. He's a great young man. He's a great counselor too. And most of what you're going to see here tonight, Ross has put together, not by himself, with the help of all the directors, but he's really the one that pulled it together. Loretta may take credit for it, him up here a little bit. It is Ross that did the work. So Ross, I thank you. Of course, Jackie always does great things, and Janina, we're trying to teach her a little bit. So, throughout the night, we're interested in what you have to say, not only about our CIP budget, but just our budget in general. You don't know exactly what's going on. We don't know exactly what's going on. We know generally where our sales tax is going. We've gotten numbers from TAD in May, we've got numbers in June. Our final numbers don't come out until July the 25th. And our calendar this year is an absolute killer because July the 25th is Friday. Our budget work session is the following Thursday. Our charter requires that I have your proposed budget to you. You notice I said I have, that's what the charter says, but I have very little to do with it. It'll say, guys, we gotta have it by August 1st. We will try to have those books to you sometime during that weekend of the 26th or 27th. It may very well be the 27th that we get those to you because there is everything flows really from those numbers, and the most critical part of it is the effective tax rate calculation that starts with those TAD numbers. So right now, all we have are estimates, and the June numbers that we get are the most bizarre numbers of all. May is pretty good, but the certified numbers don't come until July as they work through the appeals process through the summer, and that determines what ultimately we get. So we don't know really, other than just a good estimate of habitable tax numbers. Our goal as we went into this preparation, as we go through the summer, is to maintain the same service levels. Y'all made a real good point of that during the town hall meeting. Maintain a competitive salary for our employees. That is, that's pretty easy to do during bad times. It's much harder during good times. And one of the increases you're going to see is on our baseline as we go through the presentation later in July and August is our mowing contracts going to go up. If you paid any attention, and probably it's not normal for people to pay this much attention, but our mowing crew has totally changed. They can't hire mowers right now because the hard workers have gone to the oil field, they've gone to the construction industry, and it is a totally different type of lawn mowing going on. They are now paying these guys $14 an hour to mow yards, and still having trouble hiring. I'm talking about the contract, but we see that same pressure. So that is a priority for us to keep good quality staff.
We're seeing that same thing, Gary, and all the different vendors we use for mowing all the properties, same thing, they're having a heck of a time getting crews.
They don't even look the same.
Yeah, and they're running behind because they can't get crews.
It's, the last 2 weeks, I have called Ray, as I've seen him mowing outside my windows, and said, Ray, Dylan, or Dylan's older, but somebody with an 8 or 10-year-old kid, they could mow better than these people, and faster, because they're just poking, and they're scalping into his tip, and they said, we can't hire you. So, you recall, we started that contract out with 3 contractors. Through the course to this point, 2 of them dropped out. We're down to 1 doing it all, and he's saying, I don't know if I keep doing it, and it will cost more. And Ray sitting around with other cities to see if we can get it back. I'm only using that as one example of what we do. The other thing we're dealing with is, in some of the places that we cut staff back in 2009, I guess it was pretty easy to do back then. I mean, y'all could heap lots of praise on us for doing that, but it, one part of it was hard, but the other part of it was things were slow. I mean, you just, stop thinking about the planning development department. We rid ourselves of 1 employee over there. Back in the road, we weren't selling permits. There wasn't construction going on. There was, so as things have gotten busier, and all these rooftops you see going up, that's causing people to have to review plans, to sell permits. So we're having a kind of double whammy now with increased workload with reduced staff. So when we say we need to restore some positions, it's not just to build numbers. It is we have to needs. It may not be in the exact same place as where they came from in the first place, nor would it be a total replacement. The recommendation to replace all of them, but we got to add a little bit of handful of staff in some real key places.
Gary, on some of the things like the mower contracts, have we seen the impact? I know they were put off a year with Obamacare and not having to have it, but I believe next year these mower crews are gonna start having to have, healthcare on.
But I'm glad you brought that up, because I had to make that one note. But they're facing the exact same thing we are, is that if they exceed 30 hours a week, you have to offer them health insurance. And not only can it be any health insurance, it's got to be a qualified plan at an affordable rate. It can't exceed 9% of their salary of just the employees. So that's the other thing, is they're limiting their staff, they're limiting their hours, so if you can't get more than 30 hours, you go either get you another part-time job, or you go get you a full-time job. But yeah, that is a killer. We are having trouble right now in several of our areas, and even to the point of looking at other cities that we can share, lifeguards. Our outdoor lifeguards can fall under the seasonal, some of the mowing things can too, but our indoor lifeguards, because we're open year round, we have to be careful that they won't fall into the seasonal exception. And so it takes more lifeguards we're not paying more money, but if we get the same number of hours that we were getting, it's getting more and more tough. I think, Chrissy, that's you telling that story the other day, some poor service somewhere.
I was Sears at the mall trying to buy a hand tool, and there was three, they were nice young ladies behind the counter, but they were just talking to each other as they were checking out our group of people that were lying. And their entire discussion that I was overhearing was about when they got off, and one of them was going to Justice to work her second job, and the other was going to here, and as you listen to them talk, between the three of them, two of them had 3 part-time jobs. The other one had 2 part-time jobs, because of what we're talking about here. That's the new reality.
Our hardest place, hit place, with golf course. Because a lot of those guys have been with us from the beginning. And we hope we have that range fixed, but it's a challenge. Because we can't do it without those guys. We can't have the same thing out there that's happening with the mowing crew. We've got kind of itinerant workers out there that is highly skilled work. It may not look like it for a lot of people, but it is highly skilled.
You're doing it with a very small amount of higher skill.
Even you don't know about it.
Sir?
Even you don't
No,
know.
I don't. You're right. You're right. And I'm not, I know you golfers do, but to a lot of people, that you just think, well, they're just mowing grass. Well, there's a heck of a lot more than that. I mean, we have a really good.
Guys are still there that are right now? 3. But those were 1996, the current employees.
And those are guys that get virtually no benefits, and we don't pay them all that much. They're hard workers. So we got several challenges. The other challenge that you're gonna see as we go through the end of the year, this is one of those, it is really good news, but it is really bad news, is our rebates. When you have sales tax rebates, and your sales tax exceeds your budget by 9%, then you're gonna exceed your rebate budget by 9%. So as we go towards the end of the year, you're gonna see that our rebates are through the roof, well above our budget. And we'll likely have to true it up at the end, but it is, that's the good news, bad news of sales tax. And one of the major baseline increases that you'll see for the coming year is rebates. And so it's huge. And that is simply,
Could you explain that a little bit, because I don't.
But that's more than offset on revenues.
it absolutely is, but the way our budget works,
Yeah.
it can put you over budget. You can be over budget on revenue and over budget on expenditures. And of course, to us, over budget is a dirty word, as it well should be. What that is where we have sales tax agreements with ready-mix concrete,
Yes.
any of these. When they have skyrocketing sales, skyrocketing payments in our sales tax, then the amount that we rebate to goes up. Same thing with the rental car.
Okay.
Our net income is still greater.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
But somebody who's just looking at the budget, they're gonna think, oh, you guys aren't.
Just
controlling
calling
the
attention to you
rebates.
because I mean, part of that increase in expenditures next year is gonna look like pretty good. Well, that's, a lot of it's rebates.
Yeah.
So, and it's just there, and it is, But it is great news.
Well, yeah, because all day long, if you'll give me 20, I'll give you 2 back, and we can do that as long as you want to do it.
We just call your attention to that.
Even
because
if you're
it's-
over budget.
Even if I'm over budget.
So, I mean, we understand where it is, we want to make sure y'all understand. Let's see.
You know, would there be a way in the budget to actually line that up where it shows, because it does show completely differently. You know, we show this here, then we show that, have a separate category, if you would, for net sales tax or net, or, you know, like the rent-a-car tax, the net number. Because same thing with the rent-a-car. We have 13 million, but we're giving away, you know, whatever, 7.5 million or 8 million or whatever it is.
Okay, Ross, I brag on you. What, you want that?
So if you want to be part of the family, go ahead.
Well, I can give you an answer, and then Janina can tell you if she agrees with it or not, but could we give you a slide that will give you that information? Absolutely. Can they net it when it gets down to the final presentation? No, because their accounting principles are gonna make them show revenue at gross and expenditures at gross.
Yeah.
But for presentation purposes in here, we can absolutely show it however you like to see it.
Well, and when you do the actual budget book that's available, is there no reason why you couldn't put that one slide page in there?
I had no problem with that.
We start thinking.
Just to make it where a person who's not an accountant
Yeah.
or a genius could figure this out and just look at it and say, okay, now I understand it.
Yeah.
Because we tend to know it because we've been doing it for all these years. But somebody decides, I'm going to get involved in the city now, and I'm going to look at this budget, like, well, these guys can't even control the rebates.
Yep. Well, Janina, if you'll make it up, we'll look at how we might can show that.
All accountants are geniuses.
Compared to me, I can't.
I tend to agree with that.
Okay, and then a few other things, our fuel costs are up, I mean, obviously you drive by the gas pump and you see that, but they're up significantly. Our power costs are up, our electrical power, and gas power is up a little bit. Talk about the mowing contract, South Euless Park, we'll talk about it at the end of the meeting tonight, South Euless Pool. The other thing that we want to just call your attention to, and that in the next few weeks, you're going to see a couple of site plans. We will probably bring you a site plan for Glade Park at our budget work session on August the 31st, a discussion of it so that we can try to get you to approve it at the first regular council meeting in August the 12th. And when you see that, you are going to be wowed by it. And I'm thrilled to be wowed by it. However, and I don't want to be negative about this at all, it is still a projection. And so we have to be careful because they're going to talk about breaking ground in the not too distant future on some very large development out there. And, but then when we get to our work session, you say, okay, why is our revenue not up to account for that? Well, you know, you probably got 6 to 8 months of construction, if it starts on time, if they don't have bad weather, and then you've got a lag of a couple of months before you, even if it comes, from getting that sales tax. We're not planning on putting a whole lot of that in the budget. It's, for some of our known, like the building that's under construction, we're not going to produce a lot of sales tax. We'll do that, but stuff that is just on paper, even if it's approved by the council, we don't intend to put that.
Yeah, but if we approve it by the end of August, let's just say, and they started breaking ground, well, they'd have to get all their permits and everything else. They couldn't break ground at the earliest mid-October, which is tough building time when you start getting to that time of year. You're looking at, conservatively, I've seen them fast-paced, some of these things in 4 months, but that's just one building. These are going to be multiple buildings, which they're going to want to pour all at the same time. So, best case scenario, you're looking at 6 months to get the shells, and then an additional month or 2 to finish off inside, then start merchandising and doing the other stuff. So we're now into next August or September.
What is the schedule for Dave and Buster's?
They're supposed to open before Christmas, which probably means before Thanksgiving, because they want that season. Now, Dave & Buster's is one that they have not broken ground yet, I don't think. They're approved, the plans are under review. They're gonna come. And so we'll look at that. There's not all that much to it. Dave & Buster's sales tax, but so much there's an arcade, and it gets a little complicated at how much that is taxed. But we'll probably look at that, and then whatever we get off the, whatever that is, AT&T store, and Potbelly Pig. But the rest of that you probably will not see today on that. I want to say that's good for next year, but we will really hope it will correct a lot more. So, talk about the timing. The last thing I tell you is that we're in a really good time right now. And as we prepare this budget, we are preparing it for nothing more than current tax rate. That's what it is. If there's opportunity for something else, we will look at that, but I do not make any promises, rather than kicking me under here, that we're not looking at a tax rate increase. Bear in mind, doesn't matter what you do with that tax rate, unless you dropped it drastically, you are going to be facing the scenario in September, I guess, where you have to get for.
That's not a big deal.
I know, but I'm just calling your attention that it's, so even if there should, if we stay flat, or we put a little decrease in it, you got that facing. And I appreciate that it's not a big deal. Y'all get it.
We've all gotten so used to
Yeah.
getting ready to face criticism
I just don't want
and explain it, so.
I just want you to think that there's a prospect for something that avoids that anyhow. Okay.
If Glade Parks does get fully online by the next fiscal year, the number of dollars in sales tax that we should be getting even after rebates is going to be a significant number. I
It will
mean,
be significant. And Mr. Senator pointed out something the other day that, and I know y'all probably all think about this. Maybe he's the last to get it. But when you approach those residential subdivisions that, some of them are not, you may, it may not wow you, but that is significant wealth being brought into the city because of the people that they would buy those homes and the spending multiplication of that, but then the ad valorem tax value of that is significant. And so that we're seeing a lot of that. We've got people that are talking with us about hotels. We've got, there's just, I really can put a finger, there's no one talking to us about a casino. I don't, but there's not many things that there's not somebody talking with us about doing. It's legal. So it's a great time.
Do we have any tablecloth restaurants?
Any tablecloth restaurants? Not that I know of. Well, the second one,
That's close.
Last year.
What was it?
Saviano's.
Oh, 7.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jessica.
But no, that's not. We're very hopeful of a couple of restaurants, but I don't know that they're gonna have tablecloths. I mean, there's a very popular barbecue place that I think will come here, not on North Main, but somewhere else, and, but they won't have any tablecloths. It may be butcher paper, but it's not. There's a wonderful Mexican restaurant.
Jim, we have that great location right over there where NTV wanted to go.
He's stuck in his craw.
Got to be on my tombstone. Okay,
Yeah.
so with all that, before we get into CIP, any thoughts from y'all? And I really appreciate your comment about that. It's not a big deal, but that is, we
Well,
need to know.
one thing that I don't know how to say this properly, but in the last several years, we have had major projects that have taken a great deal of cash. We've taken airport funds to fund that, basically. And I don't know how the funding and accounting might work, but I'd like to see us build a reserve. And if we could, have it so that if we had another downturn, we could use those funds to get us through. I know that generally, if we don't spend it, the only time we can use it is for one-time expenditures. And I don't know if that may not be the correct understanding, but that's the way I understand it. But if we build a reserve, I don't know, I just like to see us have a little better reserve than we have.
A true rainy day fund.
Yes.
I hear you clearly, and if y'all recall, we discussed this some through that downturn, is we got significant reserves, and absolutely, we can.
But they're mandatory reserves.
So not all of them. I mean, an example would be that $2 million rental car reserve. It's never been touched. And even through the downturn, we didn't touch it. So if I guess if it continued to go further south, we would have. And that's not an argument against doing it. I'm just saying there's probably more reserve there than most people realize. And even the major projects that we've done, that's really been coming from reserves, where you build that reserve up to a certain level and then you are a project. But it's available. It's not necessarily designated, or if it is designated, you can read it. So that is a great point, and I think you ought to always have that rating.
Why would we have to have a reserve on the rent-a-car fund when all we're doing is every dollar that comes in, we give 67 cents away? I mean, there's nothing that we would have. I don't understand why we would have a reserve.
The explanation of that is real easy. I mean, Glenn knows because he was there. He was one of the ones that set it up. But when that first started, that's what the council decided. They want to set aside a $2 million reserve.
It's a rainy day fund.
Okay, well, as long as that's what it's actually used for, okay.
That's exactly right.
So everything we got, I mean, when we've talked about, I don't want to go too far with this, but a development project where we may have cash out, and we've told you where money is available from, it excludes that $2 million in rainy day fund. It is hands off. There is in EDC, there is.
$150,000 contingency, and then we also have the reserve that is required.
Yeah, so above, there's a number of those that cobble together, actually, that equals real money. But that's not to say it doesn't need to go up, but it's, anytime you hear us talk about the rental car fund in particular, we take a total hands-off approach to that $2 million. The reason why is the people that were here in 1999, I think, and that's really giving them credit. It's not saying, blame them. I think it's been a great choice because it is undesignated, and it does exactly what Ms. Porterfield was talking about. If we had gotten much worse in that downturn, we had that $2 million that was undesignated.
But in our budget, $2 million.
It is not much. It is not. I mean, we spend lots of money on that paper. And y'all just need to let us know what that is. And it doesn't have to be done in one chunk. I mean, we can add to it through the years. So that's great. And actually, that's the kind of thing that we're looking for, is high-level input on what y'all think that we need to be doing. And we don't take it as criticism, we take it as, here's a goal. So, anything else from sir?
My comments are, this time of year generally is always around our flood control, our ability to manage our water calls and stuff like that, but more so, that's, all cities will be facing that as we move forward in the future. And so mitigation opportunities, we need to grasp those, whether or not it's increasing our parklands or by the use of those floodways and floodplains. So just some food for thought.
Well, and something to tie into that, we saw it I can't remember which one of the ICSC or one of these things I went to. There's a new type of concrete. It's the green concrete, but it actually, it's permeable. And I know there's a Walmart, I'd say Addison, or there's somewhere in the DFW, a Walmart was built with this stuff. And after torrential rain, it's just gone. It just goes through into the ground and doesn't run off and doesn't flood places.
The reason for that, Tim, is,
Well, I think it's magic.
well, no, EPA, they've mandated your footprint, the amount of water that you can allow to get going to the storm drain. So,
Maybe we should be looking at that as different developments are coming in to recommend it, or if things that we're building.
yep.
I mean, it looks different than what you have, so you have a cosmetic issue with it. But it's definitely something that we should look at, because.
You don't have sinkholes on there, do you?
No.
Not yet, anyway.
No. Chicago and those areas like that, especially in California, I know there's.
Well, you probably wouldn't do it in North Florida, because you
No,
would have
no,
sinkholes. But when you have clay soil like this, I don't think you'd have much of an issue with it.
It's all good.
What else?
Good?
Jeremy, thoughts?
I don't know.
I know you're still learning, but anything that, and one other thing, don't be shy, so, I mean,
If we can ask two questions, you can.
yeah. I'm trying to figure out how to say
That makes us feel better too, Jerry.
I think this is, I can always remember Mr. Porterfield because I think me and him went to our first budget work session at the same time in 1999. And this is our 15th, 16th, I don't know. So, and he's still, neither one of us. No, don't hesitate to ask questions, because part of our effort here now is not only show you projects, but actually show you how the money flows through the funds.
Right. Yeah. There's just one thing that I've always dreamed about is when we do employee appreciations or employee months, when they come up, and I don't know what's in the little envelope, and I don't need to know, but it would be nice if we offered some sort of gift certificate or 25, 35, something like that to Ravens Grill, since they're bringing all their family in. It gives them somewhere to go after the meeting or before, probably after the meeting. And it entices them, you know, if 35 is available to them and they spend 50, we gain a little money off of that. It's just, well, and I think this comes back to the fireside of the house where they're living an hour and a half out. They're coming in with family. It gives them an alternative to go somewhere after. That's just one thing I want to dream
The employee of the month gets some gift certificate.
Yeah, they're given, I don't even know how much it is.
I don't know, take a look.
Is it 20? So they're.
Apparently, nobody in this group has ever been.
I
think it's 25.
The mayor did it the other night, she gave it to,
That's what we
her
usually
husband.
hand to the spouse.
Yeah. And that is a gift card too, right, for.
Okay.
But I don't know. My responsibility for that is to sign the certificate.
Okay.
But it doesn't have an amount on it?
Janina says 25 is correct.
It was 25, right?
Suitable for hanging.
Oh, the certificate, not the gift certificate.
But that, we may need to go further with that. That's it.
You know, maybe we go 35 for the employee of the month and then maybe 15 for a 15-year fan or 20-year fan.
Okay. We sure look at that. Y'all make it, no, anything else? Okay, then, Miss Ketchel, I'm gonna eat the rest of my sandwich.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do our employees get into the aquatic center, do they have to pay? Or is their individual entry fee comped as part of their?
The employees get a complimentary membership, a basic membership to the recreation center. And beginning this year, we're evaluating how it works. They and their immediate family pay, camp, and, everything else they have to pay with that, to get the membership and the, what?
So for their immediate family too, that's.
For their immediate families, and that's, we didn't do it last year, and, well, because we weren't sure if we'd be overwhelmed, and so we decided we would try it this year, and, but we told them we're kind of trying. If it's used or whatever, they have to pay for the cabanas, the whatever else they get out there, they have to pay the rate, the food, whatever, they get access.
And they can get away with it.
Anything else? And Ms. Getchell's gonna walk us through our CIP plan.
I was just thinking, when
Oh,
you said,
I'm sorry. You may already be saying this. These, we got books for you, but they are draft books, and I would ask that you leave them here tonight. When you get your budget, your budget proposal, it will be in there. But if you would, consider this tonight is, kind of a pretty hard proposal.
and what I was gonna say is, I think it was about, in your first work session, did we have a capital improvements budget, or were you part of the group that asked for this document? I think was it you, Mr. Tyson, or?
Years ago.
Yeah, years ago, 1999 or so, was the first time we actually got a capital improvements plan booklet like this put together. So maybe if you're first, you may not have even had this. So, but so I want to take just a minute to talk about the setup of this book and how our capital, we use the term CIP or capital improvements plan quite a bit. Just talk about how we set it up. You know our operating fund, and we have all those many funds that Janina reports to you on every month. And we have general fund, and targeted fund, and EDC fund, and so forth. Well, for many of those, we have a corresponding capital fund. And we have a general capital fund, we have a targeted capital fund, a water and wastewater capital fund. And we keep those monies separated as well. So if monies are designated for water and wastewater projects, and we put the money in the water wastewater capital fund, it is designated for water wastewater projects, and it's not going to be diverted to something else. The same is true if you've got something for street CIP. It stays with the streets until you were to tell us to do otherwise, but it's going to stay in that fund. We further then go into each one of those funds, and when you say, okay, we have a water wastewater fund, and we want to allocate money to these 5 projects, we give all 5 of those projects a unique number, and we put in the amount of money that you say that we are budgeted for, and that money stays with that project until it is closed, and then we return that money back to the fund balance for the water and sewer fund, and we bring it back to you and say, you have money in the CIP fund balance that you can reallocate. So sometimes we will say money is coming from an operating fund. Sometimes we will say money is in the CIP fund balance. The way the money gets in the CIP fund balance is if there was some excess from a project and it's closed out, we put that money right back in a water and sewer CIP fund balance, bring it back to you, and you reallocate it. So it doesn't go anywhere else until, now there are times that you might choose to make an amendment to a project, or that we might recommend to you an amendment to a project. And if we recommend an amendment, it will be noted every year at this time in this book. And we have a page in there that's called appropriations and amendments. It's going to reflect anything you appropriated last year or anything that we think needs an amendment to an ongoing project. So we're asking you to put more money into it because we've depleted it down and it needs more money. That is typically the case in like a miscellaneous street improvement project. Well, most likely we are never going to close that project. It's going to go forever because we're always going to have some need for some miscellaneous street improvements. And what that is there for is rather than tying up a huge amount of dollars in our baseline budget every year and having to raise the tax rate to set that money aside in case we have an erosion on streets because of a lot of rain or really, really cold weather or really, really hot weather or anything else, then we say, let us set up this capital project for miscellaneous street improvements. Let's seed that with whatever the minimum recommended balance is. And if we don't use it this year, it rolls over to next year and the following year and so forth. We'll suggest a minimum balance that we keep, and we'll just replenish whatever we need for that minimum balance. Therefore, we're not sitting tying up, let's say, $150,000 in baseline, and in the form of, that obviously would have to be funded by our taxes. Let's just fund it as we need it, and keep that there so if there happens to be a huge erosion on Bear Creek Parkway, that there are some funds available that can be used to go out, do those base repairs, do that improvement. So, but most of these do have a finite life, but it might be 2 or 3 or 4 years. It's not 1 year as we typically, our operating budgets are for a 1 year period. Our capital is for the life of the project. So if we start the aquatic center and it takes 3 years to finish, that project will continue to roll over every year until it's completed. And so and then when we set this book up, and I'll take the blame for some of the terminology that's been referred to here in the past. When we were setting this up, we said, well, how can we set it up? And we said, well, we're going to call the section that you appropriate money for or that you approve funded. And then anything that has not been approved by you, we'll call unfunded. And then when we close it, we'll call it completed. So we have 3 sections, funded, unfunded, and completed. There can be projects in the funded section that aren't funded. The funding is pending. And when that is the case, we clearly note that in there. Maybe there's a bond sale that we're anticipating, but it hasn't happened yet, so the funds aren't physically there. In most cases, the funds are physically there. But in any case where there's not, we always note that. There might also be a grant where we believe that a grant is forthcoming. Well, if you don't give us an appropriation, if you don't give us an authorization, then we cannot do anything with it. So what we do is we come to you and say, we would like you to approve this project. We would like you to give us a budget for it. And the funding will be this grant or this bond sale. And at the time it's appropriate for us to react to that, we will bring it forward for you to approve the debt sale or you to approve the acceptance of the grant, whatever it might be. And then we have the authorization to move forward rather than waiting another whole budget cycle and perhaps losing out on an opportunity. And so that will sometimes be mentioned. But like I said, our intent there under funded was that those are typically, the cash is typically in the bank with a very few exceptions, and I'll point those out as we go through. Yes, sir.
Going back just a little bit, CIP is a special group of funds and expenditures that are outside the general fund and outside the water and wastewater fund and all that. But in our consolidated statement, they are included as revenues and expenditures, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that also can be misleading if someone is looking at that consolidated statement and you say, here's your revenues and here are your expenses. Well, expenses exceed revenue. Your budget is not balanced. Well, if you do not look at that beginning line, which is beginning fund balance, those are the monies that we rolled over from the prior year. So let's say we sell a bond this year and that bond sale is $5 million and that project goes on for 2 or 3 years. Well, in the second and third year, you're going to see expenditures towards that project, but the revenue came in the first year, and so those monies are in the beginning fund balance, not in the revenue line. So your expenditures on that consolidated report may very well exceed revenue because you're basically using your savings account or you're using your accumulated balances to pay that. But the capital is simply a function of, it'd be no different if you saved up your money to buy a car and you saved up for 5 years and you had all that sitting in the bank, and then next year you go out and buy a car and you have 0 revenue that year. Well, it's coming out of the money you accumulated in the 5 years leading up, and the expenditure hits that year you decide to make that purchase. Ours is very similar there. On the operating side, that revenue and expense is very critical that we make sure ongoing revenues and ongoing expenses balance. On the capital side, it's very much, in our case, an accumulation of cash in many, many cases so that we can pay cash for something 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road.
The seniors that are in the aquatic center, for example, we save it up and we spend it.
So those are very good points. So that's just to kind of give you a bit of a flavor of how the book was set up, and thanks to Mr. Portville, Mr. Tyson, and those guys back in 1997 or 98 that said, we need a nice consolidated book that we can work from every year and roll forward, and so we've been doing that for the last several years. I think we touched on that. Behind each of it, we talked about funded and unfunded. Behind each of those, then we broke it into 5 basic categories. And we broke it into the drainage, which has a drainage fee that funds that. We have street, we have water, wastewater, and other. Other is basically where any of your facility improvements, park improvements, and things that just don't generally fit anywhere else will go, because on a regular basis, we're likely to have drainage, street, water, wastewater, and then that other category is going to pick up our basic art facilities, things of that nature. As I said earlier, in those categories, typically drainage is going to come from the drainage fee. It doesn't have to, but it typically would. Water and wastewater is typically going to be funded from cash transfers from the Water and Sewer Operating Fund, or monies that have been returned to the CIP fund balance. There is a water and wastewater impact fee, and so that can fund water and wastewater. Some water and wastewater projects, those have restrictions. And then when you get to other, that can come from, I guess any of these potentially could come from grants, but our other is where you would typically see that we might issue debt to pay for something. We might use car rental funds. We might use excess general fund reserves. We might use EDC funds. So there's a variety of sources that can fund those, but we will always specify. And so then behind those tabs, every project will have a project description. It will give a scope. It will have a budget. It will show the funding source, where the money's come from, and how much has been expended to date. And so we update this for you every year. And then once that project is completely done, then we will close it out, put it in the completed section, and return those excess monies to the source from which they came, into that fund balance. And they sit there until you reappropriate them. So that's how the process works. Any questions on any of that? Yes, Mr. Porter?
You mentioned Carl Tyson, it reminded me, are you still doing the 5-year projection?
Yes, sir. That will be in your, we have the 5-year plan in here, which is your priority B. And then we even look out beyond 5 years, which are priority C. And then in your operating budget, you will have a tab 10 that will be a 5-year multi-year budget. And that is where we actually go through, and we make sure we have a funding source for everything that is within the 5-year plan. So, and also in the multi-year, we incorporate all of that stuff into that multi-year. If there's a debt sale, you'll see the corresponding debt sale show up in that multi-year plan that Janine and her staff will prepare in the operating budget side. So if there is an operating impact, we will flow that through the operating fund in the multi-year budget.
An example of what when you started off talking about things that we would have a project, but we don't necessarily have the funding. We have it as funded, but we don't have the cash there yet. That's like the $10 million Boyd Branch.
Boyd Branch is
where you got the asterisk or the little number there saying debt not yet issued. So.
Right. And I will talk about that one in just a minute when we get there, and try to make sure, I want to be very sure that we're transparent on those that we do
Which
not
one is
have.
Boyd Branch?
That creek that runs down along Home Depot and then through the South Tri-Port Creek, that creek.
East side of Chase Bank.
Sure.
East side of Chase Bank.
Yeah, the east side of Chase Bank. One other thing that we've learned on that is oftentimes if there's grant money available, you gotta have an identified project with a shortfall. And so it's very helpful if we have a project identified and it doesn't show funding because it qualifies for grant money. So there's an advantage there. Don't think it will be on Boyd Branch, but you know, that's
For the accountants in the room, down at that project level, they literally have that down to the balance sheet and income statement by project. So, I mean, it tracks it, all the cash, the liabilities, the assets, the liabilities, they have it all even down to the project level, and they maintain that for their records. So,
there's 5 people in this room here.
that many?
I was saying,
Yeah, those 3 that board bill.
So they can give you some pretty good details.
Barker looked around the corner, he thought maybe he needed to carry
messed up the slides already. I've been gone for 2 seconds.
Okay, so as we start moving on through, we will start with the drainage, and we currently have 4 funded drainage projects. Mr. Fine, this is gonna address the concern you said there on our very first one and our second one as well. The miscellaneous drainage improvement project is a project that you allowed us to set up a number of years back. And then in recent years, you've allowed us to sweep any excess reserves into this project to have those available to address issues that may arise because,
Help them orient themselves in there.
I'm sorry, and I had that on my, let me say it, it's top, my first line says page 5.
It's
I'm going off
funded
script.
behind drainage. Behind that tab, there's the overall summary, and then the details are on each page of the tab.
And so this project was set up, we set it up in such a way that we can sweep any excess reserves in there, have that money available in the event that we have a flooding event, or before we have a flooding event, if we identify bank stabilization that needs to be done, or things of that nature. There is currently about $694,000 in that project. Janine and her staff estimate that we'll have about $120,000 available at the end of this year that we can sweep into that. And I will remind you that even though you give us budget authority, we cannot spend anything in excess of a $50,000 project without bringing it back to you. So the fact that we have this budget available, could we go out and do a small project? Sure, and address that. But if there's a major project that we're going to go seek bids, we're going to bring those back to you, and you're going to get an opportunity to approve the individual expenditure as it comes forward through the bid process. So if this gives us some money there, that if we do have some sort of major flood event, or if we have even just a bank that gives way or something like that, that we do have some funds available that we can react to that. And those projects can obviously be very, very costly, just to try to do even a short amount of bank stabilization, as you mentioned. So, any questions on that one? The next one kind of goes right along with that, and we did have some flooding a few years back, and sometimes the answer to the flooding is not necessarily fixing the creek or the bank. It may be applying the properties that are flooding, and the reality of that is simply sometimes to fix the creek may be millions and millions of dollars, when in fact there may only be 1 or 2 homes that are in jeopardy, and it just simply doesn't make financial sense to do the $10 million project if maybe you only have 1 or 2 homes that would be impacted. So you allow us to set up a flooding mitigation project that could be used to do some sort of flooding work if we needed to, or the alternative and more likely would be if there was a home that needed to be acquired that was being flooded. And sometimes there are grant monies that can assist, and so we may only have a matching portion. And so we have $482,000 available in that project. So if we had a flood event, and we do know there are some areas in town that are prone to that, at this point, it certainly would only be when you have a person who is a willing seller, and typically it's when there's been repetitive flooding that would be an issue. The miscellaneous creek maintenance, this is one of those ongoing projects. This will likely never close out. The crews need to get in there and do tree removal, brush and debris removal on an ongoing basis. We recommend that we keep $100,000 in there annually. Based on what we've spent, what we expect to spend between now and the end of the year, we're requesting $30,000.
Does that mean we've only spent $30,000 last year?
If I look real quick at what we spent today on that, and I don't know that this one's probably going to be live to date, so they may have to give me just this current year. This shows $34,534. And it looks like they may be expecting to spend, but right now we still have our $100,000, so my guess is they've talked with Public Works and they're expecting to need to spend about $30,000 between now and the end of the year to do their creek.
Oh, between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, that has to do with time of year. They're doing this kind of spring. We know, we hope from our spring rains. The rains we've been having recently will result in, particularly along Little Bear, when it finally starts to stop raining, they'll have to go down there to do tree removal. And so that's an estimate of what they'll spend. for the most part.
Has erosion, has it receded or been lessened, or has it remained the same kind of that area just east of Main Street on that area there? Is it lessened?
No, I mean,
Remained the
it's
same?
where we've done work, it's held pretty good. Where we've not done work, it's not gonna do good. And that's back to the miscellaneous drainage improvements. That does not apply to something like Little Bear Creek, because that is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in fact, if you do all of it, it's millions and millions. But, we had access Euless deal here a while back on Blessing Branch, just, on the east side of Main Street, where we got a playground and it needs to be addressed. Well, that is probably something that would come from that miscellaneous drainage improvement.
What is the status of that house?
I was just gonna ask the same thing.
Where the backyard was being eroded?
But it was the builder's responsibility?
It is, we've not heard any more from, as far as we know, between the builder and house is still there. But we have told them the circumstances that, which we would do anything, and which is basically grant them access to our property. And we've not heard more.
That deal at the lake where the house,
Like we,
Yeah.
I thought about that.
no, yeah, but it's much the same thing. It's, we talked about it from property ownership. But like Whitney, the Corps of Engineers owns property below a certain elevation, that guy's lot. A good part of it below a certain elevation. In this case, you go into the creek, but it's ultimately, that's probably what's gonna happen if somebody doesn't do anything. But to this point, Chris, unless you've heard anything different,
Yes, sir.
it's between the developer, who is Terry Sandlin, and, I don't know. In fact, I don't know if we've ever had this communication with home.
Supposed to go there.
Yeah, it's supposed to be there.
Thank you.
Boyd Branch, we mentioned earlier, that is the one that we say is primarily the responsibility of the adjacent property owners. This project is not funded. It's one of those that we would most likely only participate in if we had a significant redevelopment opportunity. And if that were to occur, all we're doing here is giving you the authorization if you had some form of redevelopment that required this drainage work to be done, and they were willing to do their part for the city to participate in some way in that.
If we didn't have this in here and all of a sudden something popped up, we couldn't do it in this fiscal
You
year.
would need to wait until the next budget
Right.
cycle to take some sort of
In
action.
this case, that is the only reason.
The state took care of the drainage for the northwestern part of that lot, did it not? That goes close to Home Depot.
Well,
Now, he's talking about the right one, it's just, I don't know.
I couldn't sit here and tell you right now, or remember whether that was the 157 or the Home Depot. That,
Well, I know that the 157 project did a lot of it. I don't know if it did all of it.
It's, that's been too long ago. They kind of coincided, I think, didn't they?
Pretty much.
Yeah, but it's the.
I think the whole Home Depot was dependent upon it. So
The rest of this is basically on private property, from that point on. Sure.
I just want to say, I do like that what you've done in the budget book, we're putting the one beside that and giving an explanation. Yeah, it's in our funded category, but the money have not been allocated, so I think that really helps our citizens understand the difference between funded and unfunded, even though it has to be in our funded category, even though there's no money in case we have the opportunity to do something with the project that year. So I like the fact that you put an asterisk or some sort of disclaimer or explanation associated